Vroom, vroom. Right, so you've seen the video about the forging the front axle, and you've seen the video about Monaco. Well, there was a box of videos, and Susie says, oh, you ought to see what's on them. We had another thing with the BBC when they came to me and said about, I don't know, I can't remember now, but I finished up racing Dean Butler's Type 51 with this lovely girl interviewing me. You'll see, lovely hair and smashing. And then the next one was a house that they were rebuilding, daytime television. So I don't think there's any chance of any of you ever seen this, because I think only 4 people probably ever saw it. But I went there with a Type 51 Bugatti that belonged to David Hyman, and she asked me all about the Bugatti, and then she's shooting off and doing thing, and then they were restoring the house. But anyway, I told all about the Bugatti. But one of the funny things was, because old John, you know, he can turn his hand to anything. Well, he's a bit of a builder as well, and he's done a fabulous job of his own house. But anyway, he's walking around and he's going, oh, I don't think much of the way they're doing that, and oh, don't like that bit there, and you know, so it's very funny. But anyway, you'll see. So anyway, so Susie's going to cut them up and splice them up or whatever she does, and I'll do a little bit of a commentary and tell you what's going on.
Vintage Bugatti racing cars are an obsession for Ivan Dutton. His father was a Bugatti mechanic, and now Ivan rebuilds and restores them for well-heeled enthusiasts.
The Bugatti has got something very special. You cannot believe how good it is. It changes gear beautifully, it stops beautifully, steers beautifully. It's just a very, very clever car.
These are Ivan's poshest residents, and they're kept in 5-star conditions. Prices range from a mere 150 grand to over £1 million. They're cars that most of us can only dream of driving. But for Ivan, that dream has come true. He's pulled some strings and a few gear levers, and thanks to a wealthy client, he's poised for action in the Vintage Sports Car Club's prestigious Bugatti race at Silverstone.
For their year, they was the fastest thing. So just like somebody would want a Lamborghini or a McLaren or whatever now, Bugattis were the same in their day. Sometimes going down the straight really feels like heaven to me. I just can't believe how lucky I am to even get a go in some of these cars, you know.
The day of the race has finally arrived, and I'm at Silverstone. It's freezing cold and pouring with rain, but nothing stops the Bugatti driver. How's it going, Ivan?
Good, good. It's a bit wet, and I think it's going to be slippery, but I think it'll be all right, and the car's going very well.
So tell us about the car.
It's a 1932 Type 51 Bugatti, and it was raced by Louis Chiron, who won the Monaco Grand Prix in it. So it's a very good car with a perfect pedigree.
And what's it worth, roughly?
Well, I mean, this is a very important car. I could think it might even be worth £1 million.
Blimey, I hope you don't prang it
well,
today.
Obviously, that's on my mind.
13 of the most expensive Grand Prix Bugattis have arrived from all over Britain and are hurriedly getting in some last-minute practice. Racing old motors is the ultimate indulgence. But what is it about Bugattis in particular that makes grown men desperate to play with them?
Some cars, obviously, you can't use them on the road, and this is the only way to exercise them. Sure, a lot of vintage cars live in museums, and I think that's a real shame.
But it's a thrill only a lucky few can afford.
Well, this was my father's car. And in fact, I always used to think that everyone's parents had old cars and that people just didn't really throw them away.
How much do you reckon she costs you a year?
I wouldn't really want to think about it. It might ruin my fun.
Under starter's orders, and he's off on that dream escapade, roaring around Silverstone at up to 100 miles an hour. He came in a perfectly creditable third. Beaten maybe, but not defeated.
Not a bad result, really, for an old boy.
So you're coming back next year?
Yes, I'm coming back next year, and next year I'll be in my own car. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm rebuilding the car now, and it'll be the first time I've ever raced my own car.
Well, good luck to him. But if I was going to spend £1 million on a car, I'd want one with a roof.
Hello there. Well, I'm sitting in front of the Home and Leisure House inside a 1932 Bugatti, the very car that was driven by Louis Chiron in the 1932 Monaco Grand Prix to first place. Now, I'd like to introduce the man who knows about as much about this Bugatti as there is to know. Ivan Dutton is the sort of caretaker and mechanic and racer, aren't you, Ivan?
That's right.
Of this car. Nice of you to come along and to bring her, of course. Now, we know she's a winner because you've won several races in her, but what really makes her so great?
Well, the Bugatti was an amazing family. They were artists and they were involved in lots of things. And Ettore Bugatti obviously was the car man, and he was famous for obviously his Grand Prix cars. And one of the features of the cars was the fact it was very good at handling. The steering was beautiful, the brakes were beautiful, and in some ways they probably weren't as fast as the other cars, but they was always better at handling, and they usually won because they handled so well.
That's the main thing. Excellent.
Yes.
The Bugatti. It's right-hand drive, Ivan.
Yes, all Bugattis were right-hand drive. I think it was probably to do with the racing and the way they went round the tracks at the time.
Okay. And with Jack. So we've got it jacked up, Ivan. What are we going to have a look at?
Well, we're going to have a look at the brakes because they're a very important part of a racing car, obviously. They were cable operated, but it was a fully compensating system. But one of the clever things was that the brake drum was incorporated in the wheel. So when you took the wheel off, immediately you saw the brake drums.
It's right there.
So in a long distance race, they could take the wheels off because they probably needed new tyres.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they could have a slightly smaller brake drum, which would take up the wear on the brake shoes. So in other words, they come in for new tyres, but at the same time, they'd get new brakes
brakes as well,
brakes that were adjusted.
Yes.
And
isn't that magnificent?
they're quite clever how you adjust them.
The Bugatti. Now, Ivan, I can see you've got a rather strange-looking tool there. What on earth is that for?
Well, this is a tool that we've devised so that you can lift the brake shoe and adjust the brakes by inserting shims into this little gap here.
Gosh,
obviously, you can easily get your fingers caught, so this does make a very good job of it.
It just connects perfectly.
It just pulls it up and you can click the shim in and you can get the brakes adjusted perfectly.
Calibrated perfectly.
Absolutely. And of course the wheel is a very clever piece of design because obviously you have to dissipate the heat from the drum which goes into the aluminium wheel, and on the front here you've got a very slight angle which tends to act as a fan to draw the air across the wheel and cool the whole thing.
That's amazing. Well, thanks for that, Ivan. Now, you might be forgiven for thinking that the Bugatti is an Italian car. You would be mistaken, however, because although Ettore Bugatti was born in Italy, he spent all his life in France, and he developed this car in France. He died a Frenchman. So, Ivan, what's special about this here?
Well, it was a quick lift filler cap, so that the mechanic could lift it quickly, fill it up with water, and be off.
Off they go. Ivan, it's a rather fine watch you've got there, I see.
Yes, it's a watch which Ettore Bugatti had made by Mido in Switzerland, and he had them made and he gave them away to his most important customers and his racing drivers. And this one was actually given to Elizabeth Unick in 1925. She was a famous lady racing driver who raced Bugattis, and she nearly won the Targa Florio.
Oh, good for her.
All the men. And unfortunately, she had a very silly thing go wrong with her car just a few miles from the finish. And I think she finished fourth in the end.
Oh, well, good for her anyway. What, that was in 1925. That's extraordinary.
Well, no, that wasn't in 25. That was in 28. This was given to her for a hill climb.
In 25. And two it is. So now we're going to reveal the engine, aren't we, Ivan?
Oh. There you are.
My goodness. And John's here helping to put the cover away. Now, this is a very unusual looking engine. Tell me a bit about it.
Well, it's a straight 8 twin cam engine. In 1930, Bugatti was tending to get beaten, and he had to upgrade his cars. And he bought a Miller racing car from America, and he actually copied the top half of a Miller. In other words, all this piece.
Right.
He kept his original bottom end Bugatti, grafted this on, and it kept the car competitive for another couple of years.
Very clever. Was that known at the time that he'd done that?
Well, yes, because, well, it was known, but years later, there were photographs taken in the Bugatti factory, and in the background there were these two old Millers sitting there. So it was quite obvious what
Bugatti. What's this bit here, Ivan? It looks quite sort of complicated.
It's a supercharger, and really it's an air pump to blow the fuel into the engine, which increases the power by up to 40%.
We're investigating this beautiful Bugatti, brought to us by Ivan, who's now going to show us some of this interior. Ivan, what have we got down here you're showing me?
Well, the clutch mechanism...
Oh, you've got a separate piece there. Oh.
The clutch mechanism was quite a clever bit of Bugatti design. It didn't have any springs, it relied on just really centrifugal force to pull that in. And it needed to be adjusted from time to time, and you had this little tool which you obviously kept with you.
You've got all these marvellous little tools and so on.
And you just push the clutch in and you go click, click, click and adjust it up until you get it exactly in the right position.
Right.
And it really is a wonderful clutch and it works beautifully.
And this is an original Bugatti clutch?
This is absolutely, this has been made brand new. It's a replica of the original.
I see. Okay.
Obviously,
very complicated.
They do wear out.
Of course. Now, Ivan, has this car got a fuel pump?
No. You use this pump to pressurise the fuel.
Oh, you can see it.
Yeah, that's the gauge. Tells you how much pressure you've got in the
grease
tank.
you need for this. So you would do that while you were driving? Now, Ivan, before we cover this back up again, do you still race Bugatti?
Yes, these cars are raced very seriously, actually. And one of the things that we've had to do, because we do race it so seriously, is introduce this catch tank, which we've made to fit onto the original breather system of the car.
Right.
Because obviously, nowadays they're not very happy about you throwing oil on the track like they were in the old days. So if any oil comes out of the breathers, it goes into this tank.
So it comes down this pipe or something,
Comes down
or gets
that
out
pipe
of there?
and then that pipe's down here.
So it's like a sort of a sump, or an extra sump?
Well, it's an extra sump. That's a good thing. But you know, it's called a catch tank.
Really well done. You squeeze it into a small space, didn't you?
Well, that's the design bit, you know.
Excellent. Well, it's very well done. Now, Bugattis was so custom made that even the nuts and bolts did not conform to standard metric sizes. Every nut and bolt that you can see on the engine here was made to specific sizes for Bugatti alone. We'll be right back. Now, Ivan, one of the things I was wondering about was these wires here.
Well, obviously, with a racing car, it's very nice to be able to take the body off so you can see all the mechanical parts.
Absolutely.
So Bugatti designed this little screw, which just unscrews literally all over the car, but obviously it would just vibrate and fall out. So he designed it so that you could screw it in and wire it up.
So you literally wrap the wire around
And it's just literally there to stop the screw falling out. But it's very nice to be able to take the whole body off after a race.
And see the whole thing.
Yeah, and
I was going to say, it'd be lovely if we could do it here, but it's a bit of a job, isn't it? Undoing all these screws and then wrapping it all back up again.
Yeah, it takes
I'll
about...
have to take your word for it.
It takes about an hour.
Oh my goodness, we haven't got that. Now, one of the other clever things about Bugatti and the way it was made is that all its nuts are completely free of a washer. That is, it did have a washer, but it's completely integral. And of course, this wonderful monster of a beast we've got here. Now, I noticed it's got a starting handle. Does that actually still work, Ivan?
Yes, well, they used to have these, and very often in the days when these cars were raced, they had a riding mechanic. So it would be his job to start the car.
Right, now you have to get your thumb on the right way or something, don't you?
Yeah, you just get hold of it like that.
Wow! Excellent sound it's got. It's quicker to do it that way than with a key sometimes, isn't it?
Well, it probably is, but they don't always start as good as that.
It's not always as efficient as well.
And usually when people are looking, they don't start either.
But we were looking and it did, because you're a star. That's marvelous. I'm with Ivan. Ivan, what's the top speed of this?
About 135 miles an hour.
Not bad. Still winning races?
Yes, yeah, still winning races and won more races than any other Grand Prix car ever.
Right. Now, Ivan, I'd be pretty, I think I feel it pretty hairy going at 130 miles an hour in here. But when you're actually getting up to that speed, you've got to change gear and stuff. And I don't see a gear shift, so I'm wondering how you do it.
Well, this is a gear lever, which is again a bit of Bugatti design, but unfortunately it's back to front. This is first, and that's second. So, and then back across is third, and top. So this can be a bit confusing if you're not used to driving them.
Right.
So that's why we've written on the windscreen here a little plan of what it is, so that obviously
there's 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. And then your reverse is right up here.
That's it. You press
Very strange. I wouldn't be able to sort that one out in a crisis.
Press the button. And the handbrake is a fly-off type, which obviously you hold on the line.
Let it go, and off she flies.
And then you go.
Now, Ettore Bugatti was a man with more than just one string to his motoring bow. Not content with just designing cars, he designed trains, planes, and boats as well. Sounds like a song. Man's a genius, but Ivan. Now, Ivan, we've been all over the car and we've looked at a great many things. It looks like you found something you need to fix.
Yes, well, the kingpins on a Bugatti are unique in the fact that they're not greased. Right. Because grease is not necessarily a very good thing because it tends to move away from where the pressure is.
It's all squidges, isn't it?
So Bugatti use thick oil.
Right. Ooh,
and what you have to do is you have to just top this little reservoir up in here with oil, and it tends to run out, but it makes the kingpins last for a very great long time, and you have to remember to do it. And if you leave the car for a few months, one of the first jobs you must do is oil the kingpins.
Okay. Well, that passes the test for me, as does the Bugatti when it comes to racing. Right now, that looks to me like bicycle chains down there. It's a bit worrying.
Yes, it's a bit of Bugatti design again, which is very clever because it balances the brakes front to back.
Right.
Right,
okay.
And it works very nicely. But one of the problems of it is it's got a spring link. And a spring link, obviously years ago at some stage, must have fallen out. Because since then, they've always managed to make us, or they've always insisted, that we wire this spring link so that it can't possibly jump off.
Oh, I see.
Because obviously if it did jump off, the brakes would fail.
Everything would go, wouldn't it?
So you have to be, you know, scrutineers today would not let you race unless you had that piece of wire in place.
So they're crawling all over the car before the race.
Well, obviously, yes, and it's one of the bits they check.
Okay. Bugatti. So what are we looking at the content here, Ivan?
Well, we're looking at the front axle, which is a very clever piece of design because it's a one-piece forging and it's got a hole right the way through the middle of it. And it was very clever because they did it in several processes by drilling a hole, and it's just a very difficult thing to do, and nobody's ever managed to do it until we had it done a few years ago when we had the dies made.
You did?
Yes, and it was very expensive. It cost 20,000 quid for the dies alone.
What's that? To make these? So how does that compare with the cost of this particular Bugatti now?
Well, of course, it's a very small proportion because the car is probably worth about £750,000. And
Ivan, I have to say, take it right now and make it safe somewhere.